Nazi ideology was a worldview that claimed to explain everything about the world and how it functions. At its core, the Nazi worldview was racist and biological, positing that the so-called Aryan race, primarily the North Europeans, was the superior race of human beings to which nearly all positive human development in science, technology, art, architecture, and other fields could be attributed. All other races and peoples, save the Jews, were viewed as occupying rungs below the Aryans in a sort of hierarchy of races. Various West Europeans, such as the French and Italians, were relatively high in the hierarchy, and others, particularly the Slavic peoples, very low. The Aryans' innate superiority granted them the right and obligation to rule over other races and peoples for the benefit of humankind. The Jews, in complete contrast, were seen as a kind of anti-race, dangerous, inhuman beings in seemingly human form. They were viewed alternatively as microbes and parasites, or as devils, that is, inhuman creatures with superhuman power, a threat to the very existence of the world, a danger of cosmic proportions. And radical danger required a radical, total, and irreversible solution. But from where did the Nazis derive these ideas? And to what extent were their ideas in sync with the world at the time? We should first note that everything that Hitler and the Nazi believers argued had been said before. The Nazi worldview claimed to be scientific, and indeed it based itself on and drew from various scientific developments in the modern era. Let's take a look at some of the various sources from which the Nazis drew. Christian anti-Judaism, the development of new fields of research in social sciences and humanities, particularly philology and anthropology, the development of modern racism, particularly the theory of evolution, genetics and eugenics, and modern anti-Semitism. Christian anti-Judaism from early Christian times onward was essentially an attack on Jewish belief. The Jews were accused of deicide, rejecting and then killing the Messiah that God had sent. They were accused of blinding themselves to the truth, and hence Christianity had replaced Judaism as the new Israel. Jews were accused of being in league with the devil and of engaging in evil practices, such as the charge that they kill Christian children to use their blood in rituals, the so-called blood libel. Still, at its core, this attack sought to convert the Jews to what Christians believed was the one truth, Christianity. The treatment of the Jews was often brutal and at times murderous, but this anti-Judaism left open an escape clause for Jews: conversion. Any Jew who converted to Christianity essentially solved the problem. Yet this anti-Judaism also left an imprint on European society and its view of the Jews. And the Nazis used this imprint to good advantage in gaining tacit or active support in Germany and all of Europe. Philosophical and scientific developments in the 18th and 19th centuries both advanced societies and justified inequality at the same time. Whereas Christian belief and the new modern secular humanism shared a conviction that all human beings are potentially equal, whether because they are created in God's image or because all are born equal, some scholars in the new fields of philology, anthropology, and biology sought to exploit these sciences in order to demonstrate the supposed inherent inequality of peoples. Many of these scientific pioneers argued that the differences between languages, peoples, and cultures pointed to the superiority of some over others. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution provided these scientists the missing scientific theory that helped explain common origins to seemingly disparate things. Many philologists pointed to the Indo-European languages, a new concept of a language group, as the most developed and superior language family, while many anthropologists pointed to some European cultures as more developed and advanced than other cultures. Their research seemed to provide a scientific underpinning for the racist theories that developed, and Nazi theorists and supporters later seized on these ideas and tried unsuccessfully to provide scientific evidence to support them. The important sociologist and physiologist Herbert Spencer promoted a theory known as social Darwinism in the 1850s. In contrast to Darwin's theory of evolutionary development in the plant and animal worlds through natural selection over eons of time, Spencer argued for struggle and the survival of the fittest in the human social order in the present tense. He believed the strong must rule and the weak must submit. By the mid-1800s, racism that claimed to be scientifically based had become widely accepted. But this modern racism saw not only people of dark skin as inferior, but also divided white people into races. Count Joseph Arthur de Gobineau's 1855 book on the inequality of the races based itself on research in philology and anthropology to argue that the white races are superior to the black and yellow, and that the Aryans are the superior race among white races. The field of eugenics grew out of research into genetics and heredity. By the early 1880s, Francis Galton had developed the idea that societies should promote the propagation of certain desirable traits. This could, for example, help eliminate certain diseases. Positive eugenics advocated encouraging procreation between those with desirable traits, while negative eugenics advocated limiting or preventing procreation between people with undesirable traits. University genetics departments were created in Western countries, many of which employed national eugenic policies in the 20th century. The Nazis seized upon these ideas as part of the basis to subjugate, persecute, or even destroy various kinds of people. Developments in science and other fields impacted on Europeans' attitudes toward Jews. Jews continued to be generally perceived as strangers in society, bearers of a foreign language, culture, religion, and mores. Modern intellectuals' animus against Jews could no longer be based on religious belief, but rather on science, supposedly. Modern anti-Semitism emerged. Like the new social sciences and political theories, anti-Semitism too claimed to be scientific. Anti-Semitism supposedly harked to science as the basis for its antagonism to Jews. Anti-Semitism, a term coined by Wilhelm Marr in 1879, was ideological, racist, political, and organized. The Jews were now viewed as an evil and destructive race, an evil that was immutable, which meant that the Jews' increasing integration into society should be reversed. The Nazi worldview coalesced in an age of ideologies. From the mid-19th century to nearly the mid-20th century, many competing and conflicting ideologies arose, seeking to explain the world and society and claiming to have the formula to make a perfect world. Adolf Hitler and his followers also claimed to explain and fix the world to perfection. They drew upon scientific and other modern developments and merged these ideas with German folkish ideology, a German racial nationalistic ideology that saw all Germans as organically, biologically connected to each other and to the soil of their country. It was in his book Mein Kampf, published in 1925, and in subsequent talks and actions, that Hitler developed this into a worldview that turned society, morality, and the world as we know it on its head. Ultimately, the Nazi worldview led to many policies that were based on the 19th and early 20th century's scientific and ideological developments, such as Lebensraum, living space, based on the false contention that Germany is the most overcrowded country and Germans have the right to expand eastward in order to gain living space, or Operation T4, the so-called euthanasia program, in which some 200,000 German and Austrian mentally handicapped people were murdered, and most pronouncedly, the Nazi campaign against the Jews. Nazi policymaking in 1933 to 1945 was ideologically based on the Nazi worldview. Yet, policies could make tactical compromises on many issues in order to achieve their greater aims. There was only one issue on which there could be no compromise: the Jews. Whatever policy was decided upon would ultimately affect all Jews. The Nazis' innovation was not in their ideas, which, as we have seen, they borrowed from earlier thinking. Their innovation lay in molding these ideas into a comprehensive worldview that was the basis for the policy-making of a modern, scientifically, technologically, and educationally advanced country. And it was from this worldview that the final solution ultimately emerged.